on the bottom. Vayu bnei Yisrael bamidbar vayimtzu ish mekoshesh eitzim. You have it?
Okay. Yeah. Slavka.
So they were in the desert and they found a man gathering wood.
It was reputed to be called Slavka.
Yeah.
That's the one.
הוא פרש בזוהר שיש שני מיני עצים, עץ החיים ועץ הדעת. So the Zohar says, why does it say he was gathering woods in the plural? Because there are two types of trees, two types of wood. Tree of life, the wood of life, and tree of knowledge, the wood of knowledge. This, of course, this is almost the last thing in the parsha. The last thing in the parsha is tzitzis. But just before is this story about the man gathering wood, and this rhymes or it throws us back to the beginning of the parsha. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu ask the spies? Yesh ba'etz imayim. Does this land have trees or not? But there he said in the singular. So you can learn from that he was asking about either the tree of life or the tree of knowledge. But here we have somebody who was seeking to differentiate between the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. He was gathering, mekoshesh, vehu dayak eize minhon rav. And he was trying to ascertain which is greater. That's how the Zohar explains it. So I haven't looked at the Zohar, I don't know the whole story behind it. But anyway, ולהבין זה צריך להבין עניין הקדושה שאמרו רז"ל, אדם מקדש עצמו מעט מלמטה, מקדשים אותו הרבה מלמעלה. So to understand this, we have to understand the issue of what does it mean that when a person sanctifies himself a little bit from below, he is sanctified a great deal from above. אינו רוצה לומר השראת השכינה לבד. It can't be that it's only talking about the dwelling of the divine presence on the person. That's what they mean by kedusha, that he is sanctified. Okay? שעל זה אמרו בפירוש שכינה שוריה, כמו שאמרו רז"ל, שאפילו אחד שיושב ועוסק בתורה שכינה עמו. We know that the divine presence shore, in the sense of inspires. It's everywhere. So it's revealed in that sense. It's a makif. The shore here is like a makif by the person who is learning even by himself. That can't be. Why? I don't know why, he says. This is not what they mean by kedusha.
It's Netanya that somebody who learns by himself to mean this shore.
So it's a Mishnah. But why is this not the kedusha that they're talking about? מקדשים אותו מלמעלה. So let's see. אלא העניין הוא על פי מה שכתוב בגמרא, עד הכתיב ואספת דגניך, וכתיב ועמדו זרים וראו. וכאן בזמן שישראל עושים רצונו של מקום, וכאן כשאין עושים. So to understand this, we have to go back to what it says in the second parsha of Kriyas Shema. ואספת דגנך ותירושך ויצריך. That you yourself will have to go out into the field to do the work of the land. You'll have to be the farmer. And if you don't do, good. So he says that is the state when you don't do the will of Hashem, then you have to go out and do the work yourself. You have to toil yourself. Like you said, that's the curse of Adam. So when you don't serve Hashem, you serve the ground. You serve the land. You're either this or that. Noach Isha Adama. You can be Isha Elokim, you can be the man of God, you can be the man of the earth. So Adam was called Adam because he was sent back El Adama Asher Misham Lukach. It was taken from the earth, it goes back to the earth. I mean, what does it mean it goes back to the earth? That first of all, his whole life he toils to work the land. That is the lot of the Jewish people when we don't do the will of Hashem. When we don't do the will of Hashem, you have to go out and work the field and collect the produce. But in Ishaya it says in the future, that then in the future there will be such a state in which others will do the work for you. When is that? He says, when you do the will of Hashem, so Hashem finds somebody else to do the work for you.
But it says in the Chumash, Sheshet Yamim Ta'avod, V'Lishvot B'Yom HaShabbat.
Yeah. So what do you say? So what did the Arizal do? He said 6 days of the week, I learn Nigle. Okay, just Nigle. That's toil. That's Avodah Kasha, Chomer Ulvenim, Kal V'Chomer, Livun Ilchata, all this. V'Yom Shabbat, Shabbat V'Nafash, V'Yom HaShvi, Shabbat V'Nafash, that's learning Pnimius. That's how the Arizal explained it. That it doesn't mean that you have to continue working. It means that it's always relative. There's what's considered to be toil, and there's what's considered to be rest. So here, others will do your work for you. It's also relative, because even when you say today that somebody else will do your work for you, you don't mean that they have to go out and sweat in the field. They sit in an air-conditioned cabin, and soon enough, nobody's going to sit in the cabin. And the combine just goes through the field and gives you at the other end bushels worth of wheat, and all ready to be taken to be ground up and made into flour and made into bread. So it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody has to actually go out into the field and work hard, because it's all relative. But it means that either you'll be preoccupied with making a living from the land, or you will be able to dedicate yourself to Avodas Hashem. And this is hard to understand. How can you say that this is when to go out into the field and gather your produce, that's when you don't do the will of Hashem? Because before it says, in the same parsha, the second parsha of Kriyas Shema, it says it's to serve Hashem with all of your heart and with all of your soul. So how can you say that this is a state in which he's not doing the will of Hashem? The reason is, it doesn't say with all of your strength, with all of your more, doing beyond, as we talked in the last few weeks, doing what's beyond your limits. Here it's not talking about that, as it does in the first parsha in Shema, with all of your what's beyond your capabilities. So for that reason, the Gemara calls it that it's like not doing Hashem's will yet. So he said that we need this introduction to understand what it means that he'll be sanctified from above. So I don't know if you got an explanation here, but it could be that the meaning is to be sanctified from above is when your work is done for you. Okay.
Always understood it was that you put your finger out to Hashem and Hashem puts his hand out to you and pulls you up.
Sure. It doesn't mean, but it means that you don't have to pull yourself up.
But there's still the problem that he was sentenced to death for breaking Shabbos, so the allegory doesn't fit in with that.
We'll see. Let's see. Hope we get there. It says in the Zohar, to understand this whole concept that to sanctify somebody from above means to give them their means of livelihood from above. It says in the Zohar, there's no service like the service of love. It could have said service out of love. It says no, the service of love. From this we understand that to reach love, to even be in a state of love, that itself is a service. It's not that you have to serve with love, but it's the service of love. meaning attaining a state in which a person loves Hashem. וכמו שמשה רבנו עליו השלום לימד דעת לאהבה את השם אלוקיך כי הוא חייך. Just as Moshe Rabbeinu spent his life teaching the Jewish people how to come to a state of loving God. That's the avoda here, that's the toil. דהיינו לכשיתבונן איך הוא אוהב חיי נפשו ורוצה מאוד בקיום חיותו שלא יפסוק ממנו חס וחלילה, וזאת ישים האדם מליבו כי הוא יתברך הנה הוא עצמו החיות שבקרבו וחייו ממש הוא חיי העולמים עליונים ותחתונים. As we said many times, when a person thinks about the fact of how much he loves his life and wants very much to continue living, in the same way he can love Hashem, who is the true life, who is the true source of life. Okay? That he wants Hashem's life force to be revealed in the world. וזהו בכל נפשכם שכמה כוחות יש באדם בנפש החיונית כמו הזן והדוחה והמעכל. And this is all what it means, that you'll serve Hashem with all of your soul. Because the soul contains, or the psyche contains many, many different powers. The digestive power and the power that takes things out and so on. וכן בנפש השכלי, and the same thing as what a person has in his body also has in his mind. ולאהבה זו שתיקבע בליבו צריך עבודה ועמל גדול ויגיעה רבה והתבוננות ענן. So a person has to dedicate a lot of hard work to come to this type of love of God. במוחו ומחשבתו, ונקרא אהבה זו אהבת עולם מבחינת ממלא כל עולמים כנודע. And as we know, since this is all dependent on what he understands and what he integrates into him, so this is all called worldly love, or love that's dependent on the memale, on what a person understands and integrates. ולכן היא בגדר גבול ומקום, ויש לה הפסק וביטול בנתות ליבו. And because of that, because it's dependent, as we said, on limitations, on the world of limitations, on the world of borders, of limits, of things being finite, in the same way, this type of love can also, a person can be distracted from, and it can stop, because he's not thinking at that moment about Hashem. He's not thinking about how Hashem is the very will of his soul, the very will of his life, what he feels to be the essence of his life. He doesn't feel that. And when he doesn't feel that, then he's not meditating on that, he's not realizing that, he's not conscious of it, then he also doesn't feel the love of Hashem. ולכן היא בגדר גבול למקום ויש לה הפסק וביטול בנתות לבבו. אבל עניין בחינת ובכל מאודיך, as we said, that there is a state of going beyond the limits. אהבה בלי גבול. This is a type of love that has no end, it's limitless. אין לה בלי גבול למידה, ואין לה הפסק, and it never discontinues. It's always constantly on. בכל מקום שנאמר מאוד ובלי הפסק עולמית, מחמת שבא מבחינת סובב כל עלמין, וכולה קמי כלא חשיב. So that which is beyond, it comes from overcoming limits. That's what the sovev means. And that type of love is therefore without end. And it's like that type of love doesn't take into consideration even how a person feels about his life. Whether he wants to live, doesn't want to live, that's irrelevant. It takes love from the very understanding that is beyond, that Hashem is beyond everything that I see here. That He's always beyond. He's never something that I can grasp. כי הנה חיות כל העולמות, עליונים ותחתונים, אינו אלא מרוח פיו יתברך, כמו שכתוב ברוח פיו כל צבאם. כמו באדם הגשמי, למשל רוח פיו היוצא ונמשך מפנימיותו ותוכיותו, אבל מכל מקום אינו עצמותו ומהותו. The usual memale comes from what we call the spirit of Hashem's mouth. As it says, in the spirit of His mouth, all the hosts, everything exists. And that's all pnimiuto v'tuchiyuto. This is all regarding the memale, what comes from the inner aspect of Hashem. But this is not the essence and the Hashem Himself. Why? Because all of this life, as it's revealed in our world, אין גורם שינוי כלל בעצמותו, בין קודם שיצא הדיבור או ההבל ממנו, ובין אחר כך, אלא הוא זיו התפשטות ההרע. Like we've said many times, it's only a glimmer from the essence. כך כי בכל חיות כל העולמות, עליונים ותחתונים, אינו אלא זיו התפשטות ההרע, הנמשכת מאור אינסוף ברוך הוא, תוך כל עלמין להחיותם. So all this is from what we call the Memale. This is all just to give a glimmer of Hashem's light, of His essence, to the world. אבל מבחינת סובב כל עלמין, but the סובב, ומה שאינו יכול להתלבש תוך עלמין להחיותיהם. It's what the world cannot contain. Like we said, it's beyond their vessel. שהוא בחינת עצמותו ומהותו ממש. Now this is what we mean when we say Hashem's essence and what Hashem is. We're referring, again, not because the Sovev is that essence, but because in our minds, what we grasp, that's the Memala, and what we don't grasp, that's the Sovev. So Hashem's essence is always beyond our grasp, so we call it the Sovev, the light that surrounds all worlds. So this is what can't enclose inside the world, it can't integrate. שמעלה ומטה שווים ממש, שאינם תופסים מקום כלל נגדו, חס וחלילה. לכן כתיב הודו על ארץ בשמיים, שבחינת ארץ נדמה לבחינת שמיים דכולו קמי וכולי. So this is what we mean when we say this pasuk, that everything is equal before him, and therefore his glory is over heaven and earth, or earth and heaven.
Where's this pasuk?
וירם קרן העמות אלה לכו חסדיו לבני ישראל וחברו הללויה. We say when we bring the Sefer Torah back into the Aron.
I don't recognize it with this not.
כן. והאהבה זו מבחינת סובב קונים לא תשתנה לעולם מחמת אהבות אחרות בשום אופן. And this type of life, this type of love, which is predicated on that which is beyond and is not limited to what I grasp, this type of love can never change. It's unchanging. No other love can extinguish it. That's what it says, that many waters are a symbol for love, because water is chesed, it's loving kindness. So
water was unstable.
Yeah, you keep saying that. It's just a shapeshifter, but it doesn't mean it's unstable. ועמך כולם צדיקים, לכל אחד לפום שיעור עלילי, יש לו בחינת אהבה זו. And every person has some grasp of this type of love. כי דכתיב ועמך כולם צדיקים. That's what it means when it says, your nation are all pious. They're all צדיקים. וכתיב היה לו עוד ברית, ביני וביניכם, וכתיב כי אותי ביני וביניכם ברית עולם. פירוש עוד ברית הוא בחינת אהבה זו מבחינת סובב כהנים שאינה מתלבשת בתוככם, רק שעומדת עליכם בבחינת מקיף ביני וביניכם. So whenever it talks about there being the sign of the covenant, the sign of the covenant refers to this type of infinite love.
No, there's no covenant between Kodesh Baruch Hu and women, only between men.
Why?
The covenant is the covenant of the bris, no?
That's one covenant. There's ברית המאור also, ברית הלשון.
This is this.
Like women, it's more in the tongue. That you don't speak things that you're not supposed to speak. It's called ברית הלשון וברית המאור. Where is it written? Sefer Yitzirah, it's written, and everybody quotes it.
It was men who weren't allowed to speak, no women.
Talk at home. No, we're talking about where they're
9/10 of the koach of Dibur was given to women.
Okay. So that's why they have such a nisayon with it, because they have so much of it. So it's very hard to guard it, to guard their tongue. Netzor leshoncha meira.
Oh?
Netzor leshoncha meira. You have to safeguard your tongue from speaking negative things. So for them, that's the covenant that they have to guard, and men have the covenant of the organ, and everybody together has a covenant of Shabbos, which is also beyond, which is also from the Soviet.
Toiv.
So all this is the Ot Brit, is a sign of the covenant. So this is from the Soviv, and it can't be enclosed inside the people. It's always surrounding them. Bein you v'nechem, between me and you. וזהו שחז"ל קראו אותו יתברך בשם הקדוש ברוך הוא, ולא בשאר שמות וכינויים כגון החום. So why did in the end the sages call Hashem Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, however you say it, the Holy Blessed One. So the question becomes, why, of all the adjectives that could have been chosen to describe God, he said the merciful, like the Arabs, they say Allah al-Rahim or something like that.
Okay.
They say Allah the merciful. They call Hashem merciful. Well, I don't know why, because they don't believe in mercy, maybe. But
they don't
okay, maybe they say it's enough that He's already sanctified. We don't have to be sanctified. But we say that Hashem is sanctified. And why? Because that's the power that He gives us. He gives us the power to be pious, the power to be sacred. So they called Him in the end HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they didn't use the merciful and so on. Why? Why did the sages use this adjective of holy? כי כל השמות וכינויים הם על שם התהוות הפעולה נמשכת מאיתו יתברך, ואפילו שם הוויה או על שם שמהווה מאין ליש. So all the different names and connotations that God has, they all come to describe some action, some act that He's doing all the time. Even when you say Havaya, you say Yud Ke Vav Ke, what do you mean? You mean Hashem as making the world, bringing the world into existence at every moment.
Kadosh can also mean separated.
Oh, but Kadosh, so that's already something else. It's not how He is acting, but it represents His very essence. מה שאין כן שם קדוש מורה על עצמותו, שהוא קדוש ומובדל. He's holy, and what we mean by holy is that He's separate. He's not the same as everything else. That's the main thing, that Hashem is not more of the same. He's more, but not of the same. Something entirely different. And that אינו מתלבש תוך עלמין. And that cannot be contained, cannot be integrated into a limited consciousness in the world. Because we're limited. So we can't understand something that's always beyond.
What's Almin?
Sorry, where? Almin, worlds.
Alamin.
Okay. וקדוש ברוך הוא אין סוף המתלבש תוך זה
דיור וגרמי אחד.
כן, דיור וגרמי הוא חד. What does he want to say? Okay, so the Chiddush is that even though He Himself is unfathomable, He's able, and this is why we call Him Baruch Hu, that He's able to bless in the sense of coming down, even though He's so separate from all of reality. He's able to come down. The infinite can somehow be contained within the finite, but He remains infinite in His nature. So that infinity, that's called Kadosh. Kadosh Baruch Hu and Sofa mitlabesh toch za. Why do we say Baruch Hu? Again, because lavrich means to bring something down. To say a blessing is to bring sustenance down. So Hashem is holy in the sense of separate, completely separate, but He's able to be Baruch. And to be Baruch means that He's able to come down into our reality. And then we say that He enclosed within Za, Zer, and Pin, the smaller continents, Diu v'Gol Moichad, and in that context, the light and the vessel are one thing. והאהבה הבאה מבחינה זו נקראת קדושה לשון נוקבה שמקבלת מקדוש כמו שכתוב ולשך תשוקתך. So he says there's two things. Hashem Himself is called Kadosh, and what comes down is called Kedusha. And the love that emanates from Hashem's being beyond reality, beyond all limits, that love in ourselves, we call that Kedusha. We call that holiness. So He's Kadosh, He's holy, and then we get the participle, whatever it's called, when an adjective becomes a noun.
Oh, don't start with that
What?
grammar. Don't start
Get the
talking
show.
about grammar. My wife is always giving me lectures on grammar.
She knows.
It's totally beyond my comprehension.
Anyway,
Rashi was a genius in grammar, by the way, but that's
she probably still is.
yeah.
Just doesn't do much with it. Should start giving classes.
Who?
She can. The whole economy is going to change now. She wants to go back to work. It's very easy.
What's going to change?
Everything's going to change now.
What's going to happen?
Anything that can be online is going to be online.
Okay.
What can't be online? Very little. Swimming pool can't be online. You can't learn swimming online. That's not going to work. So there are going to be all kinds of solutions. You can expect most offices, office space in the world, to go down by 50% in the next year. Because you can hopefully lignoz, completely file away the whole 5G plan. Because the whole 5G plan was needed when people were on the go. But nobody's going to be on the go now. You can forget about oil prices. You can forget about a ton of stuff. Because anything that can be online is going to be online. And so you have to think that way, that this is tremendous opportunity for that type of change. And what can I give online that people need? That's the question every person has to ask himself. So as Jews, we always had something to give online. We just haven't been doing it enough, or the wrong way, or whatever. Content. We have Torah to give. Schools, this is universities are not going to disappear, because there's always going to be people who will want some kind of, personal instruction or something like that, or face-to-face instruction. But I don't know if there's 10,000 institutions in the United States today. You can count on there being 2,000 in 10 years. They're all going to close. What are you going to do with all this space?
Open Bati Chabad.
Okay, so that's one option. There's other options also, but I think that anybody who has anything invested in housing or in office space, certainly, has got to think really, really quickly.
25% of the offices in Bnei Brak have closed down.
Where?
Bnei Brak.
Okay. That's not much. That's just the beginning. It's just the beginning right now. So what are they going to do with all this office space? There's tons of office space. It's true, it's not as much as there is residential space. But a lot of it could be converted to apartments. Eventually. It will take some time, but it'll happen. And prices will go down, because there's going to be suddenly, out of nowhere, a tremendous amount of space. And suddenly open up. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
Better still, buy something and keep this place.
What?
Buy something, and prices go down.
Okay, said
Just hold on to this place.
Why? It'll never be as much as it is now. Probably. This is like the peak. Again, but it means a lot of things. Like, for instance, who wants to go to a government office? Nobody wants to go today. But there were certain things that people said, it's worth the hassle for me to go there, because I see that it gets done right, and so on and so forth. But governments all over the world are going to try to move everything online. So if you had to go to the tabu, I don't think you'll have to go to the tabu anymore. They'll find ways. So what are they going to use? They're probably going to use some form of cryptocurrency, some kind of blockchain. Is what they're going to start.
Some kind of.
The blockchain is going to suddenly become important again, because
I don't know what that is.
it's what Bitcoin works on, and other things.
Well, that was either. So.
Okay. Anyway, so these, Canary Wharf now, 50% is empty. Barclays is not opening up for the next year.
Where's Barclays?
Canary Wharf. The whole bank.
Okay.
They said, don't come in. Don't come in for a year.
Oh, yeah?
We don't need you.
They said in Israel don't come into the banks, no?
Yeah, they closed a lot of them. That was happening anyway. that most of the banking was going
I'll
online.
be coming if you have an appointment.
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be some face-to-face, and there's going to be some amount, you know, it's more like new opportunities open up. It doesn't necessarily completely close off what there was. But the area that's going to have to go through the most change is education. And right now... What?
And relative.
Why?
Because people have to start putting their money under the tiles instead of going into banks or investing it, because nothing is safe.
No, I think it's safe. I don't think our problem is that things are unsafe. I think our problem is
all
that
my money that I had saved up dropped by 25%.
25% is nothing. The 25% will come back. That for sure will happen.
So what's going to happen to planes? Nobody's going to fly anymore?
That's gone. I don't see this ever returning. This was a unique period in history, 100 years of flight. There's going to be planes, but they're not going to be used for air travel. Or they will seldom be used for air travel. They'll be very expensive. They'll be like something that you do once in your life, or something like that. Whoever got in, got in. That's it. It's not going to be done anymore. There's no reason to it.
You're not going to go and visit your family or Hussars?
You will. How many times did people do it? Think about 1600s and Europeans moving to America. So how many times did they see each other after they moved? It happened. It wasn't impossible. It happened. Today it's even easier. It can happen. But you're not going to sit next to a complete stranger for 10 hours in a flight. Why risk it? What's the so the airlines can find, you know, a solution to this and put everybody in first class and have 2 meters between each seat and so on, but it's going to cost that amount. So you'll do it once in a lifetime. You'll save it up. I mean, that's where it's going, and you see people online. It just changes the whole. It might lead to a completely different picture of family.
What about beaming people up like in Star Trek?
If that comes, then that will definitely kill the planes. There will be no more planes.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
Okay.